The greenhouse air clung to Natalie Parker's skin as she carefully transplanted the rare orchid specimens that would decorate her wedding reception tables. 5 days remained until she would walk down the aisle to meet Dominic Reed, her fiancé. Of 2 years, and every detail had been meticulously planned like one of her award-winning landscape designs. "These are stunning, Nat," whispered Vanessa Cruz, brushing her copper hair behind her ear as she leaned in to examine the delicate blooms. As Natalie's best friend since their university days in the horticulture program, and now her maid of honor, Vanessa had been by her side through every wedding decision. "Dominic is going to be blown away." Natalie smiled, trying to ignore the slight tension that had been building between them over the past few months. "That's the plan." Speaking of Dominic, did he mention anything about the wine selection when you stopped by the restaurant yesterday? A flicker of something surprise? Guilt crossed Vanessa's face before she busied herself with the potting soil. "Oh, I actually couldn't make it. Emergency client consultation. You know how these corporate garden renovations can be." Natalie frowned. "That's weird. Dominic texted that you two had finalized the pairings." She reached for her phone, scrolling through messages. "See? Right here. Right. Yes, sorry." Vanessa laughed, the sound slightly too high. "I meant I couldn't stay long. Such a crazy week. My brain is scattered everywhere." Natalie nodded slowly, an uneasy feeling settling in her stomach like a stone. It wasn't the first inconsistency she'd noticed recently. Dominic, normally transparent as glass, had developed odd new habits over the past 6 months. His phone now remained perpetually face down. His restaurant, Terroir, supposedly required more late-night inventory sessions than ever before. When she'd surprise him with lunch, his assistant Charlotte often seemed confused about his whereabouts. "Earth to Natalie." Vanessa waved her hand, soil still clinging to her fingers. "You disappeared into that beautiful brain of yours again? Wedding jitters?" "Just thinking about the floral timeline," Natalie lied, forcing a smile. "Hey, are we still on for the final dress fitting tomorrow?" "At 2? Actually, can we push it to 4? I have a client meeting that might run long." "The boutique closes at 5, and they need at least an hour," Natalie replied, watching Vanessa's expression carefully. "Right? Of course." Vanessa pulled out her phone, frowning at the screen. "Let me see if I can reschedule the client." Natalie's phone buzzed with a text from Dominic. "Late meeting with wine distributor tonight. Don't wait up. Love you X." She typed back. "Mind if I join? Could use your opinion on the ceremony backdrop sketches." The 3 dots appeared, disappeared, reappeared, and finally, "Not the best night, sweetheart. Boring business stuff. I'll look at them tomorrow. Promise." Natalie set down her transplanting tools with deliberate care, suddenly needing fresh air outside the humid greenhouse. "I think I'm done here. These need to acclimate before Friday anyway." Later that evening, in the apartment she and Dominic had spent a year renovating together, Natalie sat surrounded by sample fabrics and seating charts. Instead of focusing on them, she found herself scrolling through photos from the past year, studying images of Dominic and Vanessa at various events: her birthday dinner, his restaurant's anniversary party, their engagement celebration. Had their smiles always lingered too long on each other? Was Vanessa's hand on his arm in that New Year's photo casual or intimate? When had Dominic started using that particular cologne that now sometimes clung to Vanessa's scarf? Natalie closed her laptop, her mind racing with possibilities she didn't want to face. The vintage emerald engagement ring on her finger caught the light, its weight suddenly unfamiliar. 5 more days until the wedding that had consumed a year of planning and most of her savings. 5 more days until 120 guests would witness her marry the man she'd fallen for when he'd commissioned her to design the garden space for his farm-to-table restaurant. 5 more days to discover if the two people she trusted most were hiding something that would destroy everything she'd built. The bridal boutique's chandelier cast prismatic patterns across the ivory silk of Natalie's gown as she stood before the three-way mirror. 4 days until the wedding, and the final alterations were perfect. The bodice hugged her torso exactly as she'd envisioned, while the skirt cascaded like water over river stones. "You look absolutely breathtaking," the boutique owner, Eliza, said with genuine admiration. "Your fiancé won't be able to take his eyes off you." Natalie forced a smile, checking her watch again. 3:45, and still no Vanessa. The fitting had been scheduled for 2, but after 3 frantic texts claiming traffic delays, Natalie had asked Eliza to accommodate them later. "Should we wait a bit longer for your maid of honor?" Eliza asked gently. "No, I think we're done." Natalie swallowed her disappointment. "If you could help me out of this, I need to make another appointment across town." As Eliza carefully helped her remove the gown, Natalie's phone buzzed with a message from Vanessa. "So sorry. Stuck with difficult client. Can we do dinner instead? I'll bring wine and all the details for the bachelorette." Before Natalie could respond, another text arrived, this one from Charlotte, Dominic's assistant. "Just confirming your reservation for 2 tomorrow night for the menu tasting. Chef Dominic wants to make sure everything's perfect." Natalie frowned. Dominic had told her this morning he had to cancel their tasting because of a sudden supplier issue. She typed back to Charlotte, looking forward to it. "Just to confirm, that's 7 p.m.? Actually, I have 8:30 p.m. in the book." The special table in the wine cellar, as requested. Natalie's stomach tightened. The wine cellar was Dominic's favorite spot for romantic dinners. They'd shared their first kiss there, surrounded by bottles of aging Bordeaux. "Thank you, Charlotte. See you tomorrow." Outside the boutique, instead of heading home, Natalie drove to Terroir. The restaurant wouldn't open for dinner service for another hour, but staff would be prepping. She parked across the street, her heart pounding as she spotted Dominic's Audi in the small staff lot, and beside it, Vanessa's distinctive vintage Volkswagen with the botanical decals advertising her landscaping business. Natalie checked her reflection in the rear-view mirror, applied a fresh coat of lipstick, and made a decision. She wouldn't confront them yet. Not until she was certain. For the next 3 days, Natalie maintained a flawless performance of the excited bride. She confirmed details with vendors, laughed appropriately during her abbreviated bachelorette dinner, which Vanessa had downgraded from the originally planned weekend trip, citing work commitments, and kissed Dominic with practiced affection while cataloging his excuses and absences. Meanwhile, she meticulously tracked discrepancies. Vanessa claimed to be meeting clients when her business calendar, which they shared from their days as partners, showed no appointments. Dominic's wine distributor meetings conveniently aligned with Vanessa's unexplained absences. The cologne Natalie had never purchased appeared on Vanessa's scarf, which she'd borrowed from Natalie's closet, except Natalie had never owned such a scarf. The night before the wedding rehearsal, Natalie stood in their kitchen, mechanically, chopping vegetables for a dinner Dominic had promised to be home for. Her phone chimed with a message from their wedding photographer, Theo. "Just confirming location change for tomorrow's rehearsal shots." Dominic mentioned switching from the botanical garden terrace to the restaurant wine cellar for more meaningful backdrop. "Need to bring different lighting setup, if so." Natalie set down her knife, suddenly certain of what she needed to do. She called Theo immediately. "No location change. In fact, I have a special request for both the rehearsal and ceremony shoots." The morning of the wedding rehearsal dawned bright and clear, with just 2 days remaining until the ceremony. Natalie sat at her vanity, carefully applying makeup while mentally reviewing her plan. The seating chart had been accidentally misplaced. The custom vows needed last-minute revisions. Small changes that wouldn't raise suspicions, but would give her the space she needed for what came next. "Morning, beautiful," Dominic said, appearing in the doorway of their bedroom. He looked tired, shadows under his eyes that he attributed to pre-wedding stress and late inventory work. "Ready for tonight?" "Absolutely," Natalie smiled, meeting his eyes in the mirror. "Though I realized I left my folder with the ceremony notes at Terroir when we had dinner last week. Would you mind if I swing by and grab it this afternoon?" A flicker of panic crossed his face. "I can bring it home. The kitchen's going to be chaotic today with wedding prep and regular service. It's no trouble. I need to drop off the place." "Cards anyway." Dominic's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, then quickly tucked it into his pocket. "Whatever works for you. I should get going vendor deliveries this morning." He kissed her cheek, his lips barely grazing her skin before he hurried out. Natalie waited until she heard his car start, then reached for her own phone. A text from Vanessa. "Can't wait for tonight. Stopping by Terroir first to check on those special centerpieces we discussed. So excited for you." 3 hours later, Natalie pulled into Terroir's parking lot. The restaurant was technically closed until evening service, but the staff entrance would be unlocked for deliveries. She'd timed her arrival carefully, knowing Dominic's schedule and Vanessa's message. The kitchen was empty as she slipped through, nodding at the dishwasher, who hardly gave her a second glance. Music drifted from the direction of the wine cellar, a playlist she recognized as one Dominic had created months ago, claiming it was for restaurant ambiance. That the cellar door stood slightly ajar. Natalie paused, removing her heels to silence her approach, and peered through the gap. The scene that greeted her seared itself into her memory. Dominic and Vanessa, entwined on the small leather sofa, tucked between wine racks, his hands tangled. In her copper hair, her fingers working at the buttons of his chef's coat. A bottle of the rare Barolo they'd been saving for their first anniversary stood open on the table, 2 half-empty glasses beside it. "We need to be quick," Vanessa murmured between kisses. "I told Natalie I'd meet her at the florist by 3. 2 more days," Dominic replied, his voice husky. "Then we figure out how to end this charade properly." Natalie's hands trembled as she pushed the door fully open. "Why wait? Let's end it now." They sprang apart, faces draining of color. Vanessa clutched her partially unbuttoned blouse, closed while Dominic stood, straightening his clothing with clumsy movements. "Natalie, this isn't," he began. "Don't," she cut him off, her voice terrifyingly calm, even to her own ears. "Don't insult me by saying it isn't what it looks like." Vanessa started crying, tears cutting tracks through her makeup. "We never meant to hurt you. It just happened, and then we didn't know how to tell you with the wedding so close." "How?" "Consider it," Natalie replied coldly. "How long?" Dominic and Vanessa exchanged glances. 8 months, he finally admitted. Since the Food and Wine Festival in October. 8 months. While she'd been addressing invitations, choosing flowers, and planning their future, they had been building their own secret world in the shadows of her trust. "The wedding is off," Natalie said simply. "You can explain to everyone why." "Natalie, please." Dominic stepped toward her. "We can talk about this. Maybe postpone. There's nothing to discuss." She removed her engagement ring, the emerald, catching the light one final time before she placed it on the wine table. "I've already called my parents. They're helping me move my things out tonight while you're supposed to be at the rehearsal dinner." She turned to Vanessa, who had once held her hand through every heartbreak since college. "The centerpieces you came to check on? They're beautiful. I designed them especially for you. Arrangements of foxglove, tansy, and yellow carnations. Look them up in that flower language book you love so much." With that, Natalie walked out, her shoulders straight and head high, leaving behind the soft sounds of Vanessa's sobs and the heavy silence of Dominic's guilt. The afternoon sun slanted through Natalie's childhood bedroom window as she sat cross-legged on the bed, surrounded by her laptop, phone, and a stack of notepads. One day until what should have been her wedding, and instead of final beauty treatments and relaxation, she was executing a complete transformation of the event. Her mother appeared in the doorway with a mug of tea. "How are you holding up, sweetheart?" "Better than expected," Natalie answered truthfully. The initial shock and pain had quickly hardened into a crystalline resolve. "Has Dad reached everyone on the call list?" "Almost. Your cousin Thomas is handling the groomsmen. Your brother has already changed the restaurant reservation for tomorrow night." Her mother sat beside her, gently squeezing her shoulder. "Are you absolutely certain about still having the event?" Natalie nodded firmly. 100%. 98 guests have traveled to be here. The venue and catering are paid for. And I refuse to hide away while those two think they've destroyed me. Her phone buzzed with another message from Dominic, the 15th since yesterday. She deleted it without reading, just as she'd done with all his voicemails and Vanessa's tearful attempts at explanation. "Theo confirmed the photography changes," Natalie said, checking her list. "And Reverend Patterson agrees with the ceremony modifications. I just need to finalize the seating chart now that we've removed certain names." The doorbell rang downstairs, and moments later, her father called up. "Natalie, your friend from the garden center is here." She hurried down to find Julian Foster standing awkwardly in the entryway, holding a large portfolio and looking concerned. Julian had been one of her first clients when she started her landscape architecture business, hiring her to redesign the botanical garden where he worked as the head horticulturist. They developed a warm professional friendship over shared passions for rare plant species and sustainable design. "I came as soon as I got your message," he said, his normally cheerful face serious. "Are you really going through with this?" "Absolutely." Natalie led him to the dining room table, which was now covered with garden sketches and plant lists. "Can you help me make these changes by tomorrow? I know it's asking a lot." Julian studied the designs, his expression shifting from concern to admiration as he understood her vision. "This is actually brilliant, subversive, but beautiful." He looked up at her with new respect. "The botanical meaning won't be lost on anyone who knows plants. That's the idea." Natalie tapped a particular sketch. "These will replace the original, altar arrangements. And for these table centerpieces, I need specimens that represent new beginnings and truth rather than romantic love." For the next several hours, they worked side by side, Julian making calls to colleagues at the botanical garden to source specific plants, while Natalie reorganized the ceremony details. His quiet efficiency and unwavering support provided a surprising comfort she hadn't expected. As evening approached, Julian hesitated before leaving. "Natalie, what you're doing takes incredible courage. Most people would just cancel everything and disappear." She smiled, feeling genuinely at ease for the first time in days. Running away never solved anything. Besides, why should I forfeit a celebration I've planned and paid for? Tomorrow will still mark a new beginning, just not the one I expected. That night, as Natalie finalized her revised vows and selected her outfit for the following day, messages continued flooding in. Friends expressing shock and support. Family members offering to take care of Dominic in ways that made her both laugh and cringe. And a simple text from Julian. "Everything's arranged for tomorrow. The staff will have it all ready by noon. You're not alone in this." For the first time since discovering the betrayal, Natalie slept peacefully, her dreams filled not with heartbreak, but with the image of perfectly arranged gardens where every plant had meaning and purpose, even the thorny ones. The garden pavilion glowed in the late afternoon light, transformed from the romantic wedding venue Natalie had originally designed into something more powerful. Guests murmured in confusion as they arrived, finding their carefully assigned seats. Amid arrangements of sweetbriar for wounded hearts, purple hyacinth for sorrow, and bright yellow sunflowers representing truth revealed, Natalie watched from a hidden alcove as the space filled. Dominic's family was noticeably absent, uninvited after his parents had called begging her to reconsider, suggesting that boys make mistakes and marriages have survived worse. Vanessa's seat remained empty as well, though Natalie had specifically instructed the ushers to allow her entry if she appeared. "Ready?" her father asked, offering his arm. Natalie nodded, smoothing the lines of her outfit, not the wedding gown still hanging in the boutique, but a crisp white suit with a small bouquet of white roses and thistle pinned to her lapel. The string quartet began playing not the wedding march she'd selected months ago, but Vivaldi's Summer, its turbulent movements matching her emotional journey. Heads turned as she walked down the aisle alone, her father having taken his seat at her request. This was her moment, her statement, and she would stand UNESCORTED at the altar. Reverend Patterson waited with a gentle smile of understanding. Beside him stood not Dominic but Julian, who had agreed to serve as witness and support. The surprise and confusion on the guests' faces shifted to dawning comprehension as Natalie took her place and turned to address them. "Thank you all for coming today," she began, her voice clear and steady. "As you've likely noticed, this isn't quite the celebration you expected. 2 days ago, I discovered that my fiancé and maid of honor had been having an affair for 8 months while helping me plan this wedding." Gasps and murmurs rippled through the crowd. In the back row, a late arrival slipped in Vanessa, her face pale and eyes red-rimmed. Natalie acknowledged her with a slight nod before continuing. "I considered canceling everything, but then I realized, why should their betrayal rob us all of a beautiful day? Why should I hide in shame for something I didn't do? So instead, I've transformed this wedding into a celebration of honesty, self-respect, and new beginnings." She gestured to the botanical arrangements surrounding them. "Every flower and plant here was chosen for its meaning, not the romantic symbols I originally selected, but representations of truth, resilience, and growth after hardship." Reverend Patterson stepped forward. "Today, instead of witnessing marriage vows, I invite you all to join Natalie in affirming the promises we make to ourselves, promises of self-worth, honesty, and the courage to begin again when life doesn't go as planned." What followed was unlike any ceremony the guests had attended. Natalie spoke of her journey, of the pain of betrayal, but also the strength she'd discovered within herself. Friends and family were invited to share their own stories of resilience and new beginnings. Julian spoke quietly about tending gardens through changing seasons, how pruning away damaged growth allows for stronger, healthier blooms. When the formal ceremony concluded, the celebration moved to the reception space, still decorated with Natalie's carefully designed botanical installations, still featuring the menu she'd selected, but now infused with a different energy. Not the starry-eyed optimism of a new marriage, but the grounded authenticity of a woman reclaiming her narrative. "You've created something remarkable here," Julian said, handing Natalie a glass of champagne as they watched guests mingling and sharing stories. "I've never seen anything like it." "Neither have I," she admitted with a small laugh. "I'm not even sure what to call it." "A phoenixing," he suggested. "Rising from the ashes, transformed." 6 months later, Natalie's landscape architecture business had flourished, partly due to the publicity surrounding her unconventional, non-wedding. She specialized now in healing garden spaces designed for renewal and contemplation after trauma or major life changes. Dominic had sold terroir and moved to another city. Vanessa had attempted reconciliation several times before eventually sending a handwritten letter of apology and moving her business to a different region. Neither remained in Natalie's life, existing now as lessons learned rather than wounds. That defined her. On the anniversary of what would have been her wedding day, Natalie stood in the botanical garden where Julian worked. Admiring the special exhibition, they'd collaborated on a series of garden vignettes representing emotional journeys from betrayal to healing. "What do you think?" Julian asked, coming to stand beside her as visitors moved through the carefully designed spaces. "It's perfect," she replied, reaching for his hand naturally, their fingers intertwining with the ease of two people whose connection had grown organically, rooted in respect and shared passion rather than romantic fantasy. The final garden in the exhibition featured a simple bench surrounded by plants that bloomed after fire species that required destruction to release their seeds and begin anew. Above the bench, a small plaque or the words Natalie had spoken at her transformed wedding ceremony 1 year earlier. Sometimes, what appears to be an ending is merely the earth being turned to make way for something more authentic to grow.